All right, hello guys. So before we get into today's episode, I just want to let you know that I'm currently enrolling for my signature program, the Online Summit Program. Now, specifically for this week, I'm looking for no more than 10 hikers who want to get strong and pain-free so they can conquer every adventure. Now, if that sounds like you and you want to learn a little bit more about this program and see if it may be a good fit for you and your situation, please shoot me an email to rowan@summitstrength.com.au. That's ROWAN with the words "I'm interested." From there, we can find a bit of a time to chat, we can talk through it all and see if it might be a good fit for you. So if you want to find out more, shoot me an email, rowan@summitstrength.com.au, and we can go from there. So now that's enough for that. Let's get into today's episode. Hey, my name is Rowan Smith, and I want to welcome you to the Training for Trekking podcast. Now, this is the world's very first podcast, which is entirely dedicated to helping you train, prepare, and conquer your upcoming hike, trek, or mountain adventure. So once a week, I'm going to be giving you quality and practical information on the subjects of physical preparation for trekking, dealing with altitude, and nutrition on the trail, so you can know everything you need to be doing to have the best chance of a safe, enjoyable, and successful adventure. So now you know what you're in for. Let's get into today's episode. All right, hello guys. Today I want to talk you through 5 cliches that I stand for, and specifically 5 cliches that you often hear about training, about exercise, or whatever it may be, but that I really firmly stand behind as a coach. And it really lines up into what I believe as a coach, what my philosophies are around the coaching process, and how I go about coaching and training my own hikers. Now, when it comes to cliches, they are cliches for a reason. They get thrown around all the time. People always talk about it, but, there is always usually an element of truth around these things. And for these things, 5 things I'm going to talk you through today, you will 100% have heard them before. But saying that, they are so incredibly important in my opinion. And it's something I'm a massive advocate for a whole different range of reasons. So let me talk you through this. So cliche number 1, something that I really do believe in, is you should be aiming and you should be striving for progress and not perfection. Now, what I mean by this, and if you haven't heard this, you have heard this before, who am I kidding? But what I mean when I'm talking about this is quite often in the training journey or in any type of journey around change, we get stuck in thinking about the perfect scenario, having the perfect training week, having the perfect amount of energy, doing the perfect repetitions, doing the perfect hike or whatever it may be. And we think, look, this is what I want to do, or this is where I want to be. And we think in this perfect world, which is great because we should always have things we want to be aiming for as a bit of a goal. But when we get hung up on this, and if it's not going entirely in order, if your training's not going entirely in order, if your, an exercise you're doing doesn't look entirely perfect, if you're not fitting in all the sessions you planned in the week, if your energy levels aren't where you want them to be, or whatever it may be, if we're striving towards this perfection beyond anything else, and we don't give it the consideration we need, consideration around other areas, it can have the opposite effect. And it can really get us negative. It can get us, make us feel guilty. It can let us feel down, and can often lead to failure in the sense that if we can't be perfect, what are we doing? But it's not like that. There's no change is perfect. No change is linear. And there's always issues that come up and ups and downs that come away. Instead, what we want to be looking at, as opposed to perfection, are we seeing progress? Are we making a tiny change to get us towards this perfection at some stage in the future? But are we making progress in the moment? So, for example, in the exercise example, if you're struggling with an exercise, is it getting a little bit better? It may not be perfect. It may not look like something you've seen online. It may not look great in the mirror. But is it better than you did last time? Because if so, that's progress, and that is worth celebrating. Alternatively, are you, if you're striving for a training week of fitting in 6 sessions in a week, but you're only getting in 3, look back for 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago, whatever it may be. Are you fitting in more than you did previously? Or if you're going through a really stressful period in your life and that's why your training has dropped, think back to the last stressful period. Were you doing any training at all? Because if you have made any progress, if you're doing a little bit more than you were in other periods, if you're going on the way up, if compared to where you were last time, even the tiniest little bit better, that is progress and that is worth celebrating. And that is something you 100% should keep top of mind. And also the example around energy. This is something I used for an inspiration around a post I did the other day inside the Facebook group. And, for me, recently, I've been going through a period of pretty low energy. I've been knackered, I've been fatigued, and, it's been a real struggle. And I have been waking up in the mornings and I've been thinking, man, I wish I was at my normal energy levels. I wish I wasn't tired. I wish I wasn't exhausted. But then I caught myself the other day and I was like, you know what? I was saying all these things, but then I asked myself, I'm actually have more energy than I did 2 weeks ago. I'm more creative than I was 2 weeks ago. I'm definitely seeing a difference than I was 2 weeks ago. And I celebrated that because I was getting myself down because I wasn't in this perfect situation. But I recognized that there was progress. I was heading in the right direction. And that was really, really powerful for me. So when it comes to anything with your training, anything with your change you're trying to make or whatever it may be, progress, not perfection. It's a cliche, but it's so, so, so important. So that's number 1. Now, cliche number 2, which I stand for, is set yourself up for success. Now, where I'm coming from with this one is quite often when we're trying to achieve anything, we often start off with these grand plans. We're like, okay, I'm going to get fit. I'm going to train 7 days a week. Or I want to go on this hike, so I'm going to go out and hike every single weekend. Or I'm going to go on this diet and I'm going to cut out all these certain food groups or whatever it may be. But all too often, we aim way too high. And we aim so high that we might stick with it for a week, might stick with it for 2 weeks or something like that. But then something will come up and it'll all go wrong. And we'll fail. And then we'll see that failure and then we'll just fail again and again and again. And it'll just ruin our momentum. We'll never find any momentum. And we'll just drop out of this. We'll have this burst of inspiration. All of a sudden, we're not doing it anymore. And we've all been through this, different things in our life. We've all been through these bursts of inspirations and never stuck with things. And it sucks. But what I firmly believe is when you are looking at doing something like this, set yourself up for success means choosing an ambition, choosing a load, choosing something which it might not be doable now, and it is going to be a little bit of a stretch, but you're pretty confident that if you apply yourself, you're going to be able to do it. For example, if you're looking at your training right now and you're saying, okay, I've got a big hike coming up. I want to start training, but I do have a busy life. Instead of saying, okay, I'm going to do 7 days a week and I'm really, really going to go for it, maybe just say, okay, I'm going to start off with 4 days a week or 5 days a week because I know there's typically 2 days in a week that are really busy and that's a real struggle. But I'm going to aim for 4 or 5 days a week. If I get more, that's fine. But that's the baseline I'm going to aim for. And what that's going to do is you're going to each week be much more likely to tick off those 4 or 5 sessions, to tick off. Some weeks you may do more, some weeks you may only do the 4 sessions. That's absolutely fine. But that sets up a chain of success. That sets up a loop of you winning, and that makes a dramatic difference. The same thing with your hiking. Like, don't go in, if you are aware you live a busy life, you're aware you do a lot of travel or whatever it may be, don't set yourself the goal of hiking 2 times a week if you don't think that's realistic. Instead, maybe say, I'm going to hike once a week, or I'm going to hike every 2 weeks, or I'm going to hike one every 3 weeks. Set yourself that baseline, which you know you can be successful with, and you can aim towards. And then if you fit in more, that's a bonus. This one little shift, it can make such a dramatic difference to long-term change. And it's something that I'm so passionate about. So that's number 2, cliche number 2, set yourself up for success. Now, cliche number 3, something I've probably said 100 times on this podcast, is consistency is king. And it kind of goes off the last two there. In the sense of any type of training we're doing, consistency is the number one thing. It doesn't matter if you train 90 minutes once every 3 weeks. It's much, 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 much better if you can train 30 minutes once a week. Or if you can train, 90 minutes once a week, maybe doing 30 minutes 3 times a week. That is probably going to be a little bit more effective. But whatever you think is going to be consistent, that you can stick with week after week, month after month, whatever it may be, that is the secret sauce for training. That is the secret sauce for nutrition. That is the secret sauce to any type of performance. Because these types of things, change builds off itself. And it needs consistency to build off itself. And what you may experience in week 1 to week 3 to week 6 are going to be dramatically different. And it tends to sort of build and build and build momentum, and it snowballs and snowballs and snowballs. And it turns into, by the time you get to 3 weeks of consistent training, it is greater than the sum of its parts. And that is where the magic comes in. So consistency is king, and do what you need to find consistency. Now, cliche number 4, something everyone would have heard a billion times before, but I firmly believe in it, is listen to your body. In the sense, if something feels easy in your training, do something a bit harder. If you're really, really tired one day, maybe do a little bit less. If you're feeling sick, have a rest day. If you're feeling in pain, maybe ease off. Whatever it may be, listen to your body. It is the rare, rare, rare situation where you really need to push through things that your body is just telling you is wrong. Now, if you're working directly with a therapist and you may be dealing with sort of pain issues and you're experimenting in different areas there, that might be a different story, but that's a very, very particular situation. If you're aware that, you may have a low motivation tolerance, or maybe you're coming out of chronic fatigue or something like that, and you're working with someone on that, that may be a little bit different, and that's an individual situation. But as a general rule of thumb, listening to your body is the best way of going about things. In so many aspects of your training, in so many aspects of your hiking, that is what's going to be best. There's so much data and there's so much study around, the best ways of tracking how much work people have been doing in their sports or in their training, the best ways of tracking, judging risk of injury and all these things. And 9 times out of 10, what comes down when they're actually done all these studies around, all these technical ways of tracking how much people are doing and how much they're lifting and how much they're running and all of that, 9 times out of 10, it comes down to none of those fancy ways are more effective than actually someone just listening to their body. It's crazy. It is absolutely crazy. And it's something that, I just don't think we do enough. We say it all the time, but we don't do it enough. So cliche number 4, and something I really, really stand for, listen to your body. And then cliche number 5 is turn the flywheel. And I'll admit this probably isn't a cliche for a lot of people, but in certain circles or certain business circles, this is something that gets said a lot, and it's something that I really, really believe. Now, basically what this is it's kind of like the snowball effect, in the sense that if you consistently do the right things, do the small things again and again and again and again and again, and you turn this wheel again and again and again and again and again, eventually there comes a point where everything comes together. There's this tipping point where things start feeling great, where things start coming together. You can't judge how long it will take. It is quite different for everyone, but if you consistently do the right things again and again and again, there comes a turning point where everything starts to build its own momentum. Now, when this comes into your training, is if you're consistently doing your things, consistency is king. If you're putting the right work in, adding the strength, doing your mobility, doing your training, there will come a point where you're on the trail and you're like, my gosh, I notice a difference. My gosh, I'm feeling fitter. My gosh, these hills are feeling much more comfortable. My gosh, my pack is feeling light, or whatever it may be. And there comes a point where all that consistency has paid off. And there's that tipping point. You're like, yes, it was slow going. It took a while to get momentum, but yes, I can feel that. And that's something that's so, so important. Now, obviously, by yourself when you're training, it can be a little bit tricky to get your head around that and when that'll happen, but you sort of trust that you're doing the right things. But alternatively, if you are looking for someone who's been through the process or someone who has got experience in this, they can give you a few timelines. For me, typically when I say to my hikers, when they should expect results, I typically say, in the first 6 weeks, you might notice a bit of a difference, but it's probably not going to be outrageously dramatic. Some people will see differences, some people not, but the first 6 weeks, you're just turning that flywheel, being consistent, doing the right things. Around week 7, week 8, maybe you might start to notice a bit of a difference. Around week 9 or week 10, most people are starting to feel that momentum. And by the time they get around to about week 11 or week 12 on whatever training they're doing, that's when that momentum begins to come. That's when things begin to snowball. That's when that flywheel is going nuts. And that's when they're feeling really, really, really good. So in your training journey, just keep on turning that flywheel, doing the right things, and it will come. Now, 5 cliches that I stand for as a coach. You've heard them all a million times before. You've probably said them quite a few times. But I firmly believe in any type of training journey, in my coaching philosophies, the hikers that I work with and anyone that I've worked with in the past, these things add up to so important results over the long term. So keep that top of your mind because I think they are very, very important. Now, if you've been listening to this today and you're like, you know what, Rowan, these are cliches, but I like what you're saying. This sounds good. This sounds like it fits into what I believe as well. This is the type of training that I am looking for, that I believe can make a bit of change in my life. If that is what you're saying right now or anything similar to that, I want to hear from you. Now, if you haven't heard already for this week, I am doing a big promotion around my signature program, which is the online summit program. And I'm specifically looking for no more than 10 hikers who want to get strong and pain-free so they can conquer every adventure over the next 12 weeks. Now, if that is you, if you're like, yes, Rowan, let's have a chat about this. Let's see how this can fit into my life because I am ready to make a change. I'm ready to apply all these things, all these principles, and I like the coaching that you are talking about. I want to hear from you. Now, I want you to find my email, rowan@summitstrength.com.au. Just shoot me an email saying, tell me more. From there, we can find a time to chat. I can talk you through how it all works and can really see if and how this program may be a good fit for you and your situation. So if you want to learn more, shoot me an email to rowan@summitstrength.com.au. I'll leave a link in the show notes below and we can have a chat from there. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed me talking about cliches. I hope it's resonated with you, and I hope you can take some of this away and apply it into your own training journey. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.